This is Jonah Dempsey, your host of the Human Design Deconditioning Guide. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the markets environment here. And for those of you not familiar with environment, this is a concept from human design where each of us has an ideal environmental frequency, not a location. Environment's not location. You don't have an ideal place, you have an ideal frequency. And more or less, you can find that frequency in virtually any location. Now, that being said, if your environment is wet kitchens, which needs a certain amount of humidity, it's going to be very hard to find that in the high desert, unless it's monsoon season. Or, if your environment is markets, which is a real urban environment with a lot of hustle and bustle and a lot of auras, it's going to be hard to find that if you're all alone in the middle of nowhere in nature. There's no real equivalent there. But more or less, you're able to find some hint at that environment, which will be, even if you're in a place that's not healthy for you, that breeds a lot of resistance for you and so on, you can still kind of find a good place to be. So, the thing not to do when you're learning about human design environment is go, oh my God, I have to move, I have to leave, I have to, Now, that being said, I'm mountains, and I live at 7,000 feet elevation here in Santa Fe. But even in Santa Fe, there are places that are more mountains, or there's places right now that's kind of like a narrow valley because I'm walking down the street. I'm about to go up to this big kind of change of neighborhood, so that's kind of like an artificial shore, and so on. You find these different environments in any given location. Alright, so markets. What's the deal with markets? Well, markets is the second environment, the second color environment. And so it's in the splenic binary with the first color environment, caves. And both of these are really about survival. How did humanity survive from the very beginning? Well, the caves are all about a controlled authoritarian environment, more or less, especially with the left strategic variation, where survival is guaranteed because you only let in the right people. And it's really picky about who's allowed in. If you're right variable caves, you might, it's the blending caves, you're not as selective then, and then you might allow in more people. Well, if you look at the first two colors, what they're about. The first color, and this is same as the first line process now through continuity, is really about being prepared for everything that you can be prepared for. For everything that you can know you need to be prepared for. Well, we know it gets cold in winter, so let's prepare for the cold that we know is coming. We know we're going to need food, so let's prepare by making sure we have enough food, and so on. Well, the second color and the second line is really about being prepared for the unknown. Being prepared for what you can't prepare for. Being prepared for what you can't really learn about. It sounds so weird, right? It's like the first color motivation, for instance, is the teacher. The second color motivation is the guru. But what's the difference in a teacher and a guru? A teacher teaches you things. A teacher teaches you about what you can know. The guru prepares you for the call, but you don't know what the call is until it comes. You don't know what you're preparing for, right? Because really, what the second line is about what's going to change and what isn't. The second line has a nose for change, a nose for the new. Everyone is, all the first lines are all, well, we're so prepared. We have our food, we're ready for this, ready for that. The second line says, yeah, but you're not prepared for the whole system to change. Everything you've prepared for is assuming it doesn't, the terms don't change, the players don't change, the actors don't change. you're preparing in a static way, stateless, unchanging, right? And the second line is preparing for that. So if we look at it from an environmental level, this is the movement from the cave to the markets, right? The caves, which are essentially authoritarian constructs where one person's in charge, there's a hierarchy, although they have a communalist aspect as well. We know the first color also associates to the communalist and the separatist, which is that binary between, am I going to be part of the community, but I also need my own time and my own space. But the second, that first color environment, caves, is authoritarian. The second color environment is democratic. It says, hey, free market. Let's do the free market thing. Let's, it's different. It's basically saying, we're going to trade. We're going to trade, and I'm going to give you, this meat, and you're going to give me that wood. Right? I'm going to give you this fabric that I made, and you're going to, give me 2 chickens, or, whatever the case may be. And so the market is all about exchange. It's getting out of the cave, and it's having an exchange. Now, this is an interesting one. So we have internal and external markets. Internal and external markets. Now the left is still internal. Left and right refer to variable. And left is the remnants of the strategic past. And the beginning of humanity as a strategic, mind-oriented species, as opposed to the Neanderthal, who were right variable. They were very zenned out and in a flow state and had no purpose and no real use. Purpose is a very left variable thing. So, if you are left markets, your environment is actually when you're out with a task, with an agenda, with a purpose, fulfilling the items in your shopping list, going around town, going into the place and saying, I need this size of glass because I'm replacing a window, and then going to that place, I need this size of wood cut to these dimensions, and you have your task, and you're checking your tasks off your list, and you're essentially directed. You're directed to go to internal markets. Now, internal market people also may have a home office where they're working, and this is the classic mom and pop store where they live in the back and they have a kind of retail in the front. But it's not necessarily the passive right variable of just sitting and waiting to be a resource. You're actually actively doing something. You're actively on the phone making sales calls, or it's an active market. Internal markets are active markets. It's the frequency that you see in a call center where people are sitting around and they're trying to do commerce, trying to transact with people on the phone. External markets are right variable. So they're going to be, you have your booth at the farmer's market. And you have your booth and you're sitting there waiting for someone to come to you. And you're just watching everyone go by. Or, you're an external markets person, you should go to the farmer's market, every farmer's market, go to a different one each week. And if you're selling something great, then just hang out there and sell it. Not actively, passively, by watching people, right? If you're a manifester, you can do something to initiate, to kind of break the pattern a little bit, make a little scene. But other than that, you're basically just going there and being receptive because you're right variable, right? And if you're not selling something in the market, you can still go to the market. You can watch people, and you can see the commerce occurring. You can watch these transactions. Now, it has a harmonic with the fifth color, valleys, which is how information is exchanged through different cultures and so on, and through strangers. So the second color markets, you're kind of meant to be in a dense auric environment. Just like caves, you're still in the hardscape, and also like kitchens, you're in this hardscape place where you're meant to be around the densely packed auras, lots of auras. But it's second color, so it's also about what's correct. It's much more picky. The second color, the second line, this is the most discerning, this is the pickiest thing. Right? So it's funny because you might think selective caves is the most picky because it's authoritarian about who it allows in. Well, sure, it needs to maintain its authority, and the second color and second line is more democratic. So in that sense, it's open to the other, but it actually is a sort of a walled environment, in its own right. The second color is very. Anytime you see the two, you know that it's going to be something very specific. So in a way, it's the market is designed to really discern, to be discerning who your customer is. If you're the customer, then you have to really be discerning about who you're shopping from. And if you are selling, you have to be really discerning about who's buying from you. Who is your customer, right? This is what it's about. So, say your internal markets, your correct environment is not just an environment where anyone is coming and going and buying anything. It's not necessarily a Walmart, right? It's more about what kinds of markets have the kinds of people that are important for you. So if you're internal markets and you're selling something, you have your own business, right? Then it's being so discerning about what your customer is, and then you're in that active, busy place where you're extremely targeted in who you're trying to reach, and that's your correct environment. You're meeting with a special kind of client that is your thing. Maybe you just sell screen doors to hotels, and that's your thing, and you have your little niche. It's all about niche markets, right? And these are the right people for you. You love your customer, you know your customer, you're not just selling to anybody, right? Or say you're buying, same deal. These are people, if you're markets and you're sick, you need to heal, go shopping. This is for who retail therapy was made for. And if you're left variable, make sure you have a goal and you have clearly in mind, I'm going to buy a belt. And you kind of know what kind of belt you want, and you're on the hunt to find that belt. If you're right variable, don't have any agenda in that sense. You're just looking out to see what's there, to enter into the flow of the shopping experience and to witness and observe and be stimulated by all the things that you have. And then you can follow the chain down to the level of tone, and you can see the differences. What does it mean to be a first tone market or a second tone and so on. But that'll be for a different video. Are you markets? Please post your experience of examples of markets you can think of. What else has the frequency of a market that's not a conventional market? What feels like a market? What is something where, material goods are exchanged? What has that feeling? Because that'll be the right environment for you if you're markets. Or if you know somebody who's markets, or even just, you just have ideas about it. Please post them in the comments.